Mr. Klein's Story Time.
Hello, my name is Mr. Klein. I've been an elementary school teacher for almost 30 years, and I love reading stories to young people just like you. In fact, I've got a great story that I'd like to share with you right now. So let's get started.
Harriet and George's Christmas Treat by Nancy Carlson. Harriet and George's Christmas Treat. It was almost Christmas. Harriet and George were going shopping when they saw Miss Hoozit leave the grocery store. "Hi, Miss Hoozit," said Harriet. "Hi, kids," said Miss Hoozit. "No time to talk. I'm off to do my holiday baking. Now be sure to stop over later for a Christmas treat." Miss Hoozit rushed away. "Oh, no, Miss Hoozit is going home to bake," said George. "That can mean only one thing," said Harriet. "Miss Hoozit is making fruitcake." "Remember last year when Miss Hoozit made us try a piece right in front of her?" said George. "Yuck! It tasted awful," said Harriet, "and I almost broke a tooth." "Remember when you dropped Miss Hoozit's fruitcake on your foot?" said Harriet. "Ouch, that really hurt," said George. "But it worked great for cracking nuts," he said. "I'll never forget the time we used the fruitcake to play football," said Harriet. "It almost hit your little brother," said George. "That was a close call," said Harriet. "Wow, fruitcake can be dangerous." "There is only one thing for us to do this Christmas," said Harriet. "Avoid Miss Hoozit and her fruitcake," said George. On Monday, when Harriet and George saw Miss Hoozit shoveling, they pulled down their hats so she wouldn't recognize them. On Tuesday, when Harriet was helping her dad put up Christmas lights, Miss Hoozit looked out her window, so Harriet ducked behind a bush. For the rest of the week, Harriet and George hid from Miss Hoozit. By Friday, they were exhausted, but it was worth it to avoid Miss Hoozit's fruitcake. On Christmas Eve, they saw Miss Hoozit invite Harriet's brother, Walt, in for a Christmas treat. "Poor little pup," said George. "Soon he'll be eating fruitcake," said Harriet. When Walt finally came out of Miss Hoozit's house, Harriet asked, "How was the fruitcake?" "Yummy fudge!" "Miss Hoozit made fudge this year?" said George. Before Walt could answer, Miss Hoozit opened the door. "Well, there you two are," she said. "Come in for a Christmas treat." "Okay," said Harriet. "Fudge," whispered George. "I made a big batch of fudge this year," said Miss Hoozit. "Oh, boy," said Harriet. "But I could never find you two." "And my fudge is all gone. But don't worry, I still have a Christmas treat for you." "Last year's fruitcake. Eat up, and Merry Christmas," said Miss Hoozit. The end.
Thank you for coming to Story Time. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. I read new stories every week, so be sure to hit the subscribe button if you'd like to hear another one. Hope to see you again soon.